Oh boy, what a big one this was. Of course, the probably biggest deal of the trade deadline. And it was some crazy back and forthness. But the Padres, of course, solidified themselves as probably the biggest winners of the 2022 trade deadline with this trade. And of course, originally it probably would not have happened if somebody did not turn down a 15-year, $440 million contract extension. And this was not something that they had to definitely trade him, but they were listening to offers. And they wanted a lot in return. But of course, it almost didn't go through because of one man not wanting to waive his no-trade clause. But that man still got traded to a team that didn't have, that wasn't involved in his no-trade clause. So, let's talk about, most likely, the biggest trade of the 2022 trade deadline. What is going on, guys? This is the Club of the Man 1993. And, of course, from recently, right around the All-Star game, Juan Soto, former Washington National, was offered a 15-year, $440 million contract. He was originally offered a 13-year, $350 million deal in the offseason. He rejected both offers. And of course, with the Nationals, probably maybe one of the worst teams in the league, maybe the worst team in the league this year, after just falling after their 2019 World Series victory and giving up now Soto, Max Scherzer, Trey Turner, and of course included in this trade as well, Josh Bell. They've completely cleaned the slate as the biggest names are gone and the Nationals are now relying on young talent. So, of course, this Juan Soto trade was not mandatory. Soto was not due to be a free agent until 2024. But, of course, the Nationals were willing to listen to offers for him since he couldn't come up with a deal. And sure enough, it happened. So, the Washington Nationals traded Soto along with first baseman Josh Bell, former Pirate, who was going to be a free agent after the season. They traded him to the Nationals. Now, for 6 players in return. Now, originally, here's who the trade involved. So, the 6 players included rookie shortstop C.J. Abrams, who I'm definitely very intrigued by, which of course, he probably only got the playing time he did because Fernando Tatis Jr. has been out all year with a wrist injury. But now he's coming back. There's really no room for him on the Padres roster. So obviously, he was better off being part of a package deal to get a big player like Soto. We got him. To my surprise, the Padres let go of Mackenzie Gore. Now, that surprised me because I mentioned back in my Joe Musgrove extension video how the Padres, most of their starting pitchers are due to be free agents within the next year and a half. And Musgrove and Gore at the time were the only ones that they had locked up longer term. So that surprised me. That they got rid of Gore. I thought they would hold on to Gore. And also, Russell Hassel III, James Wood, and Jarlin Susana. All a little more younger talents, single A players. But definitely Abrams and Gore was the biggest names. For those 5. And then, originally, going to the Nationals, the Padres were going to give up their first baseman, Eric Hosmer, who I think halfway through an 8-year deal he signed with the Padres 4 years ago after his tenure with the Kansas City Royals when the Royals were a World Series winning team. So, okay, that kind of makes sense because they were getting Bell, who is a first baseman, And they also had my man Luke Voit. Again, I don't know why. I'm just a huge Luke Voit fan. I'm just so rooting for him to have a healthy, grand year. This year's been like 225, 13 homers so far, or something like that. Decent power numbers, but just want to see him, have a full year and play like he did in 2020. But that's probably not going to happen. So now I'm like, okay, that's not bad of a gamble. I like Eric Hosmer, don't get me wrong. I do feel like he's just maybe a little bit overrated for a reliable bat. I mean, he has a good bat, but I feel like he's more of a guy who brings, leadership to a team. I feel like he's a guy that just, he's not the most standout player, put up the hugest numbers in the world. But I feel like he has, that piece of chemistry that any ball club could use. But obviously, the Padres think we're looking to shop him because of, his huge contract and whatnot. How, he's, again, good, but I feel like he's not as big of a deal by the numbers as he looks to me. So at first I was just I'm like, okay, I guess Hosmer's going to go to the Nationals now. Well, then here's the problem. Hosmer had a 10-team no-trade clause. And he originally rejected the trade to the Nationals. So then it kind of put a big wrench in this deal for Soto. Because I thought first it was going to fall through. And it was not going to happen. But then, after they straightened out who they did go with in the end, I'll explain that in a second, they instead traded Hosmer to the Boston Red Sox, a team that was not on his 10-team no-trade clause deal. And they traded him along with prospects Corey Rosier and Max Ferguson, and as well as cash considerations in exchange for pitching prospect Jay Groom. So this was kind of a little bit of a salary dump trade, it looked like, to have a little more flexibility and to sign, a guy like Juan Soto that they could look to sign that bigger contract extension with, because Josh Bell is probably just going to be a rental. But yeah, Hosmer again instead went to the Red Sox, who Boston could use some help at first base because they have Frenchie Cordero and Bobby Delback, who really hasn't worked out too well for them at first base this year. And they also got rid of Jackie Bradley Jr. as well after he returned to the Red Sox and they released him. So he's definitely going to provide, that piece of chemistry that the Red Sox could use to maybe get back into the race. I guess there have been rumors also of them moving Rafael Devers from third base to first base, but that is not going to happen now. But yeah, Hosmer only hit .259 in 1,344 plate appearances in San Diego, which again was not definitely lived up to the contract that he had signed. But this season, hold on. He did maintain, though, a .273 mark between 2020 and 2022. But like I said, the Padres were going to get the upgrade there as well. It was with, of course, Josh Bell. So, of course, then there's, the string of prospects. And I already said Mackenzie Gore is, an excellent pickup for the Nationals, even though I am still surprised that the Padres let him go. Again, C.J. Abrams, kind of surprised that he was part of a big trade deal. I mean, he's definitely one of their top prospects. But again, they have a pretty locked up infield. I mean, he's not going to be a first baseman. Jake Cronworthing's taking over at second base. Fernando Tatis Jr. is on a rehab start. He's locked up for 12 more years. Manny Machado is locked up for a while still. Although apparently he does have an opt-out clause. He can opt out of his contract in 2023 if he wants. But it would make much of a difference. C.J. Abrams did not have a spot on the main roster, and his talent is meant elsewhere. So going to a rebuilding team like the Nationals was a great, maneuver there. And of course, there's a bunch of the other prospects as well that I don't know quite as well in this Soto trade. But of course, who ended up going to the Nationals in the end instead of Hosmer? Luke Voit. Luke Voit, again, my man Luke Voit went to the Nationals. Kind of like a bad luck spot. He had a phenomenal 2020. Leading the league with 22 home runs in just 60 games. Phenomenal numbers. Of course, injuries last year hurt him, and then by the time he got back, he lost his starting job to Anthony Rizzo. And when the Yankees re-signed Rizzo this offseason, they traded Voit to the Padres, who was briefly injured at the beginning of the year. And again, he's done decent. 12 homers, almost 50 RBIs, 230 batting average around there. Decent power numbers, but obviously he's not the best. But he's going to be taking over the bulk of the starts at first base instead of DH for the Nationals. I think he's locked up through 2024, but he could get bumped again next year. Who knows? How I still have the hopes for him. But yeah, and I was surprised also because apparently, even though they're trading him, the Padres then revealed they're also looking to trade another first baseman they have on their roster, Will Myers, the former Rookie of the Year. Myers has been injured a lot this year, and I think the Padres are ready to move on from him also. But yeah, they did have his name out there as well for trade. So I'm kind of surprised maybe a little bit that they didn't trade Myers instead of Voit. Because Myers, again, is probably, just, a little more injury prone than Voit maybe right now. I don't know. But then again, the Padres did also acquire somebody else that we will talk about who's definitely a little bit more of a utility person a little bit. We'll talk about him in a different video. But, I hope this trade works out. Again, Josh Bell's there for remainder of the year, and he's going to be a free agent. Juan Soto, I could see the Padres maybe pushing to try to sign him longer term past his 2024 contract. He wants $30 million a year. That's what he wants. He wants $30 million a year. Yeah, we'll see how Hosmer does with the Red Sox, of course, as the Red Sox have had a okay year, but of course, they're kind of in the very tough, American League West. They're hovering around 500. But maybe, of course, for the future, he could definitely help the young guys out and whatnot. So we'll see how this works out. But again, definitely, in my opinion, the biggest trade of this trade deadline, Juan Soto and Josh Bell going to the Padres in exchange for Luke Voit, Mackenzie Gore, CJ Abrams, a bunch of other prospects. Again, it was a 16-player deal. And then Eric Hosmer, of course, who was originally supposed to go to the Nationals in this trade, rejected the trade. And instead, he's off to the Boston, along with two other prospects and cash for just one prospect. Again, clear salary dump move there by the Padres. So we'll see how this trade works out. See if it works or not. Again, Juan Soto is definitely a future MVP. Yeah, the average is down a little bit. He's still got the power numbers. He still has a good chance of reaching 30 homers again. He's only 23. He's just about to turn 24, I believe. He's got a lot of years left on him, and he's already making a statement for Cooperstown. And again, this trade here was definitely a big move. So that being said, guys, that's my thoughts on the biggest deal of the trade deadline, the Juan Soto trade, along with Josh Bell. What are your guys' thoughts on this trade? Do you think the right people were moved for this? Make sure your thoughts down in the comment section below. Be sure as always to slap a like on the video and subscribe for more content on my channel. And follow me on Twitter as well at DemandAirboy93. Now, until then, guys, I'm checking out. I'll catch you all later. Have a great rest of your night. And peace out, everybody.